ain't got no. So if you've been watching my channel for a little while, you probably already know this car. We worked on this thing about, I don't know, a year and a half ago. This is that Spit 6 that we worked on. Now, this got towed in here last weekend. He was on his way up to the Dayton show, which we went to, but he didn't quite make it there. It quit running on the way to the show and he had to have it towed back and had it dropped off at my shop. When he called me on the phone, I thought I already kind of knew what the problem was because he said it backfired and just died. And that's usually something within the distributor. I see that when a distributor slips out of its clamp because somebody's, I say, over tightened it and the clamp's not seated right or something like that. And that's kind of sort of what happened, but let's get into it. So when we opened the bonnet up, the distributor was just hanging out here loose and the tack drive was twisted like this. So yes, the distributor had popped out of its clamp. And I started thinking to myself, did I screw up there when I was tuning it before? But as it turns out, no. It's actually something that I haven't really seen before. We've already got everything loosened up here. Pull the distributor out here. And we notice that we go to try to turn it, like it really hard to turn, especially this one spot, just really hard to turn. So what happened was this distributor just started seizing up in here. And then the clamp couldn't hold it anymore. And it twisted within the clamp, popped up out of there. Of course, when that happens, you lose all timing. Fuel dumps in and ends up going down the exhaust system. Then you get like one last spark that ignites everything and then boom, big old backfire. And of course, when it twisted, yeah, it also munched this cable here. So we got to replace the cable as well as the distributor. So the GT6, at least here in America, I'm not sure about everywhere else, actually used a Delco Remy distributor, not a Lucas distributor like the Vitesse 6 did or the TR6 did. And it is the same motor that's in the Vitesse and essentially the same motor that's in the TR6, except it's a shorter stroke engine, making it a 2-liter instead of the 2.5-liter like in the TR6. But the Delco Remy distributors are, I guess, very difficult to find anymore, and replacements have been pretty much non-existent for years until relatively recently. And this, from looking at it, appears to be an AccuSpark distributor, but there's no markings on it. Now the thing is probably, no matter where you're buying these distributors at, the basic body at least is probably all made by the same company, no matter who's providing the distributor. So that actually makes it difficult to identify a distributor of, what brand it is. No markings on it. So you don't really know for sure what this is unless you have paperwork to prove it. We're only guessing that's from AccuSpark. And when we looked it up, the AccuSparks looked exactly like this. And we looked up some other brands where you get them from like British Parts Northwest or something like that. Those were actually painted black in all the pictures. So we figured maybe those using the same body, better components, and they're twice the price. So they've got you would expect some better components inside of them. So I had the owner actually went ahead and did a little bit of research on his own to try to find out what he should be buying for it. So he actually ended up buying this one here, paid twice as much as the AccuSpark price, trying to get something better. And the pictures all showed it would be a black body. And when we got it here, it looks like the exact same thing. But like we said, probably only one company is making the body. And if more than one company is actually making internals for these things and putting them together, then that makes it really hard to determine. Is it exactly the same thing as this? And they're just charging you more? Or is it actually better inside? That's the question. And we're hoping that it is, but we do notice this is put on with screws rather than these rivets. And maybe it is better, but popping the cap off of it, you know, we got the same, obviously the same code here on the pickup and everything. Looks like the same, all the same bits. So that makes me slightly worried that he just paid more money for the exact same thing. And of course the rubber here has been torn from them shoving it in here pretty hard. And plus the center brush in the cap doesn't look all that nice. So yeah, I may end up trying to take this apart or take this out of here and see if I can lubricate this before we actually put it in to make sure there's something in there, that it was properly lubed from the factory before we put it in, because we don't want this thing to, in another couple years, do this again. I know I've harped on this a little bit on this channel, but this is exactly the problem with aftermarket parts today. You could be getting exactly the same part and pay twice as much from one company as the other, and you're not getting anything better. Or you might be getting something better, but you can't tell the difference between them. So yeah, it's a fun time to be working on cars right now. Now, the other thing is we don't have time right now to actually, you know, say order something else, try to find something else, maybe switch it over to a Lucas distributor, because we need to get this car running today, because he needs to use the car tonight for our club function and for a British Car Council function tomorrow that we're actually going to go to as well. So it's going to get this distributor put in it, timed, and if he wants to upgrade and do something else later, we'll just have to maybe find something else later. Now, it is really hard to effectively lubricate these things without completely disassembling them. You need to drive the roll pin out here and literally completely dismantle it to properly lubricate it. And with a brand new distributor, I don't want to do that, because any kind of warranty you have could be void then. So all I did was just took the advance plate out and just got a little bit of lube down in here so it could dribble down in through here and work its way in. And then of course you don't want to forget to put a little lube on this here, a little bit of light oil on that piece of felt there under your cap, or the distributor rotor. People forget that all the time, especially after putting electronic ignition in, because that's something you only did with points. It doesn't matter whether you have electronic ignition, that still needs lubricated, because that is the advance mechanism, and the advance mechanism could not move properly or seize up if you don't. So I went ahead and moved over all the little the sheathing that was on here, that protecting the wires, making things look nice, and put bullet connectors on there so that it would fit the car as the car is set up. And there's another thing that I think is concerning about like these things like this. They provide a new distributor clamp for it. Well, if you look at the style of clamp, first of all, it's not the same style. This would be more like on, say, the Midget 1500 or the Spitfire 1500 with the bolt on the side. But then look at the size hole there is in here. Yeah, it's pretty laughable that they send us garbage with these things. So you gotta look at your clamp. This is the other problem you can have with these things, with all of them. Doesn't matter what you're talking about, MGs, Triumph, whatever, anything with this style clamp. People have a tendency to over tighten them. They crank the crap out of these things. And if you see your bolt, this is kind of U-shaped, the bolt's starting to bend a little bit, it's been over tightened. Now, over tightening them is a problem. That's something you don't want to do, because at least on the Lucas distributors, the bottom part of this isn't solid, and you can break the edge here and ruin your distributor, and then you have to go buy a new distributor because you over tightened it. Plus, that can distort things, And then what happens is it's hard to get the distributor set in there properly. And then you end up getting clamps that are barely holding on, and then they can pop out because they're not seating properly, and they can pop out of their hole. I've seen that too many times over the years. So don't be going and over tightening them. Plus, you look at the clamp. There's a step in this clamp here. That step has to go up. I've seen so many of them upside down on like MGBs over the years, it's just ridiculous. It has to be stepped up in order to clamp the distributor body properly. So we go ahead and take it off, make sure it fits around here properly. You might have to take the bolt out and then twist this open and maybe even replace the bolt if yours has been really cranked on hard. So now I'm going to go ahead and install this into the car and we can get this thing running. There it goes. Now this is offset slightly. This is the center line of the distributor, so it only goes in one way. That's on pretty much all of these things. Most of your MGs and Triumphs, most everything's that way. And the drive gear is the same way. So you just got to line it up so that it actually drops in all the way. And you can tell, because if you put it in the other way, it kind of sort of engages, but it's not going in all the way, going into the clamp all the way. And then you turn it the other way and it'll go all the way in there. Make sure the clamp's in there. And what I like to do at this point is then snug down the clamp here, especially with an MGB, snug the clamp down, then take the distributor out, finish tightening the clamp, make sure it's nice and snug in there because it's hard to reach on some cars, and then put the distributor back in and then finish your installation. But in this particular case, you actually can reach this and tighten that up with no problem on this particular car. It's just the clamp here isn't the easiest to work with, because if you're trying to use a screwdriver on it, it's easier to use a wrench, but then that wrench is 3/16 Whitworth, and not everybody has those on hand, but sometimes the 7/16 does fit, especially if it's a cheap 7/16 that's a little loose. They'll usually tighten those just fine. Now this is just snug enough to hold that in place. So we got this tight enough that it won't move on its own, but you can still adjust it for timing. So, and then we'll hook all these wires up, get everything buttoned down, and see if we got the timing close enough. Now at this moment, we're not going to be putting the cable on. We have a cable for it, but he wants to pick this car up in like 2 hours. And in order to put this cable in this car, you have to take the speedometer out first to give you enough room to reach the tack to take it out to replace the cable. And we do not have time for that today. So we gotta get the timing light set up here. Hopefully it works. Been having some issues with it lately. I know a lot of you guys complain about how much it costs to go to the mechanic, but most of you don't understand how much it costs to be a mechanic. I have been through so many timing lights, it's not even funny, because it's hard to find a good one that lasts without paying some big money for them. And I paid a lot more money for this one than I did my last one. And I've had it, what, 1.5 years maybe, and it's already giving me problems. So we'll see if it works. I got the distributor, I think, in a position that's it's going to be good. And I just need to look up the specs real quick to double check where they want the timing to be at on these as initial timing to get me a starting point to go with. So since I only pull choke on one carb, I can pull the choke just on another car and not have to worry about being inside. We'll see what happens. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. All right. Yeah, wasn't quite locked in. Sure the key's on? Yep. There we go. I ended up pulling the distributor again and taking a look at where the drive gear was positioned. And when they built the motor, it was actually one tooth off. So we moved it back to where it should be, got the distributor back in the position it should be. I set it where it looked right to me, started it up, checked the timing, I'm right on 10 degrees, which is where initial timing is supposed to be on a Mark II GT6. I would probably want to check full timing as long as my timing light cooperates with me, which currently it is. And then we can double check the tuning of the carbs because I know he has tweaked them a little bit since he's been driving it. Go take it a test drive and make sure everything looks good. So we were having difficulty getting the timing dialed in on that car. We get the initial timing set where we should have had it, and it just didn't run quite right, and it was pinging a little bit and running a little warm. But as we backed timing out of it to stop the pinging, it started running even warmer, and we were starting to get to that danger zone of running too hot. And actually, he ended up not being able to use it that weekend, which was the whole point of us slamming on it and buying that distributor to begin with, because he wanted to use it that weekend, expecting that since that's the distributor that was in it before, same distributor should work again. But that's one of the problems with aftermarket distributors these days. The timing can be all over the map on them, and the curve could be different from one to another within the same batch, let alone with ones from different years, which was the case here. So we ended up doing what I told him what was actually the more optimal choice. Called up Jeff at Advanced Distributors and gave him all the information he knows about the engine, compression, check, everything, and had one built and curved to suit the engine. And now he put the distributor in himself at home and timed it to what Jeff told him to set it to initially, and ended up backing it off a couple degrees because it was pinging slightly. But now he said that car is running absolutely fantastic. Best it's ever run since he's owned it. Has the power now that he always thought it should have had, and snappier throttle response, idles better, and he tweaked on the carbs, got it running better at idle than it ever has been. Because I did have a lot of trouble before working on that car getting the carbs adjusted right. And well, timing curve can make a big difference, and having it correct makes it a lot easier to tune it and makes the car a lot easier to live with. So here in the coming weeks, we should actually see that car back in the shop, because right about that same time when we were test driving it and all that, we started noticing there was some slop in the steering column that's new. Something came loose within the steering column here recently, and now the horn honks randomly when you turn the steering wheel as the steering wheel moves, and he'll probably be bringing it back to me to have me do that. And while it's here, he asked me to go ahead and check the timing, go over the carbs and make sure everything looks good, and that he's got it actually set up the way it needs to be set up. So that's it for today.